Welcome to the OBR streaming network for a brand new edition of Things I Think I Know About the Cleveland Browns. My name is Brad Ward. I'm here with my esteemed panel, Abby Mueller. You can follow Abby on Twitter at Abby_Mueller_. And of course, Quincy Carrier, and follow him at Quinn_C. How we doing, guys? Bye week. No Browns games. It was well timed, I think.
Yeah.
You know, this is good. I feel refreshed coming
It was
back
necessary.
here. Yeah,
I think we all
8 more
needed a little
games
bit
to
of
go.
a breather just to recollect ourselves with the way this season has gone. So I feel like it was nice.
It was.
I do think it was not a good thing that they went on a bye week after playing the Chargers, because I think the combination of the fact that, I think a lot of people underestimate how good the Chargers were going into that game, and then how they looked when you're not thinking that they're one of the best defenses in the NFL,
Sure.
kind of has people painting pictures about the offense. I'm like, that wasn't going to slide if another week had passed and you got to see the offense out there again. But
yeah. Well, we have such a small sample size of the Jameis-led offense at this point, so it's it is hard to make a lot of judgments during the bye week over truly a very short amount of time.
I saw some very interesting folks decide that this was the time to make the point of, it wasn't Deshaun Watson after all.
Yeah.
Even in the Jameis's bad performance, I'm like, he still was able to get over 200 yards passing.
Yeah, honestly.
Still so much better.
Yeah.
Not even close. All right. So here's I'll get it started. My thing I think I know, or the thing that I am, I guess, a little concerned about, right? And I wrote about this, but so the whole Jed Wills thing, right? It's a bunch of nonsense. He said business decision. There's negative connotations with that word. He probably shouldn't have even talked about it in the first place. I don't even know why he was speaking on it. Just kind of, I don't know, maybe to try to explain away why he's not starting anymore. But the bigger thing for me is, so he sat himself out of the Ravens game, right? Or he pulled himself out. He was cleared to play, right? And he said, I don't think I can play. Sat himself down. And they put Dawan Jones in at left tackle. And Dawan Jones looks like your potential answer at left tackle, right? You have to, opportunity cost wise and otherwise, find out if he can be your left tackle of the future at this point. Were they going to arrive there without Jedrick sitting out? Isn't that a concern? Nobody else has said this, but I've been saying since the preseason that Dawan should play left tackle, or at least get a shot over there. And I'm not sure if they would. What?
If I'm wrong, Brad, in the article, I thought it said that Jed, because I remember reading it, I thought it said that Jed had made the decision after he found out he wasn't going to be starting.
No, I think it was my understanding. Maybe I'll reread it again or whatever. Yeah. My understanding was that he was going to start at left tackle, and then he sat himself down because he couldn't go, and then they were forced to put Dawan in at left tackle. They had no other options at that point. And then the second week, they just left Dawan in. At that point, he had been benched for Dawan. So maybe I'll look further into it. But my question, I guess, is, this would be the second time now where you had Watson, who clearly needed benched. Nobody benched him. He got hurt, right? And then now with this one, I feel like Dawan should have been playing left tackle well before this to figure out what he was. I guess he responded to his benching well. He lost some weight. He changed his attitude. He gets the shot at left tackle. He's played well in pass protection. His run blocking certainly needs some work, but it's something you can work on. But either way, it's a huge opportunity for the Browns to have found a potential left tackle of the future. So my thing is, why didn't the coaching staff just arrive there without Jed Wills pulling himself out of a game?
I think it's pretty easy to see how they arrived there before Jed made him kind of get to that position, to be honest with you.
What do you
because
mean?
Because Dawan had played badly at right tackle at some point this year.
No, but they didn't arrive there. Is my point.
I'm saying I can see how they didn't get there until they had to get there, because Dawan had played poorly at right tackle this season, right? Like, it's not like he was killing it at right tackle and then you're like, oh, he's killing it so bad, let's try him at left. He had played poorly at right tackle to the point to where he had to get benched for James Hudson in a game, I think against the Raiders. And then they were out to no options, so they gave Dawan a chance there. But it's not like Dawan played to a level this year where you're like, yeah, let's give this guy more responsibility and flip his position to see if he could play left tackle. That wouldn't have like naturally had come up. Now, is there a plan to play Dawan at left tackle? I think it probably got accelerated because of all of this. If you look at somebody like Tristan Wirfs, who is now a left tackle, it took him like 3 years to get there. I think just the circumstances that they were in kind of accelerated this spot, but it's not like before he went to left tackle, Dawan was playing at a level where you're like, man, you got to try this guy out at left tackle. He was as much as a liability as Jed Wills was when he was out there at right tackle for a couple weeks there.
I think it was also hard for the majority of the start of this season to evaluate the entire offensive line in general. There were so many injuries across the board. So you were just kind of like putting different guys in and out, plugging different people in constantly. The quarterback play was making the offensive line play even worse for how long, that Deshaun was holding on to the ball. So I could see a world too where they wanted more time to evaluate, maybe just with some better play overall, with more of the pieces in place that they expected to see. So that's kind of the one, I guess, thought I have on why it could have taken them a little bit longer.
Yeah, and that does make sense because he wasn't playing well and he was coming back from an injury, right? And he was overweight and he didn't look good on his knee. So why would you try him at left tackle? So I get that. That makes a lot of sense. Both of your points make sense. You couldn't evaluate it. There's too many injuries. I guess I'm going all the way back to like the off season. Like in the off season, I'm thinking, I talked about this at length with Pete, that he should be getting reps at left tackle because you don't know who's going to come back at what time frame. They all had knee injuries. All 3-year tackles did. That you should potentially start to work him over there because he's not as good of a run blocker. He's better on the left side than the right. The Browns run the ball to the right a ton. They run the ball behind Wyatt Teller more than they do really anything else, right? To the right side. And it was a huge problem for them because they couldn't run to Dawan's side a lot of times because he was so bad in run blocking. He needs to get better at it. But in pass protection, he's been great. So moving him to the left side seemed to make kind of sense if you could find your long-term left tackle, which it looks like he may be. And that's a huge check off your list of things to do this offseason. If you can say, hey, Dawan's the left tackle moving forward. Quincy, you're making faces.
I get that. I think when we look at the situation at the beginning of the season, Jack Conklin has only come back within the last few weeks, right? So we needed a right tackle to hold it down there. I mean, both the tackle positions was hurt. So you really didn't have the luxury to go, hey, this guy that we're used to playing right tackle, let's flip him to left tackle.
No, I'm not saying play him. I'm saying just like in the preseason, why didn't they get him? I wanted them to work him on both sides, like cross-train him.
Weren't they cross-training him, though?
I don't think so. Because he kept getting asked about it and kept getting asked about it, and he's like, "We're not ready to do that yet." I don't believe that.
I mean, I remember it was reported they were cross-training him a little bit his rookie year. I also think the plan was never for Dawan Jones to be playing left tackle right now, like in year 2. I think if they thought it was possible, they wanted to give him a couple of years under his belt to play left tackle. I think that's fine. Like, I think that's a fair place to be at.
Okay.
I understand the rush to want to get there to kind of uphold what this season could have been by having him play at left tackle, but
it's not even about what it could have been now, because I don't think it matters. With the quarterback play, it doesn't matter, right? The quarterback play would have erased no matter what's going on the offensive line. I think it was bad enough. It doesn't really matter. They would be here no matter what. I'm just saying, like, it looks like you have found your left tackle of the future. And you got here kind of accidentally. And that's just kind of worrisome for me.
I think they didn't get here accidentally. I think they just were forced to get here this early, if you get what I'm saying.
So you think they would have got there eventually?
Yeah, I think that they were eventually, like, the plan was probably, hey, let's let Dawan play right tackle, see if he can hold off Jack Conklin for the whole year. And then if he can do that, then once we feel comfortable with his development at right tackle, we can flip him to left tackle, like similar to how the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did with Tristan Wirfs, where they let him play on the right side for a while. And then in year 3, they transitioned him over. I think that they wanted this to take longer so he can have more of a developmental time to get up there, because Dawan's also a very raw prospect, right? Like, he does well in pass protection, but it's not off of technique. It's just straight up brute strength and length that he wins off of. So they probably wanted him to get more comfortable having to play with more technique, getting to his spot on the right side where you're not going to go up against the most freakish edge rushers that you're going to see in the NFL before they flip him to that left side. I think the plan was always, like, to see if Dawan could play on the left side. I just think they got forced to be in that spot to play him at left tackle. And I think if the plan was never to play Dawan at left tackle, then you would have not seen Dawan at left tackle. You would have seen them, like, try to throw out Garon Christian or something goofy like that, because, like, they want to stick to their plan with Dawan there as being a sole right tackle. I think they just had to be forced early into this decision, rather than like, oh, they would have just never played Dawan at left tackle if this situation never came up.
Yeah, that's what I'm not sure about. Like, and I see your point that I think, maybe it would have made more time to develop and move him to the left side eventually. I'm not sure they were ever going to do it. The way, in listening to Kevin talk over the years, I'm not sure they are ever going to do it. They were just going to, I feel like they were happy keeping him on the right side. And maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like they were forced into it, and now it looks like a net positive. So you can see where I would be kind of concerned.
I get that too, but also it's kind of a question, like, if you look at San Francisco, if Brock Purdy never gets in there, does he play quarterback for him?
Sure. I'm sure this stuff happens all the time. I'm just
once
saying,
it happens, it's just like, okay, how we get here, it's kind of irrelevant. But I get what you're saying. Like, if you're concerned that they were never going to put him in a position to play left tackle, I just think that if they had to put him at left tackle, or there was a spot where it made sense to flip him to left tackle, they would have done it if he was, like, more seasoned as a player. It's just him being in his second year, in his second training camp. I don't think that was a great opportunity to be like, oh yeah, let's just flip him to left tackle, especially once he came in out of shape to start camp. Like, that's, you don't want to reward that by saying, hey, let's put him at left tackle. So I think they got there early, especially given how Dawan came into camp this year as well. I think that probably changed the plan, if there was a plan to put him at left earlier.
Yeah, that out of shape part, I think, probably has had a big factor on a lot of the decisions made with him, because I mean, it took quite a few weeks to get him to the point where he's at now.
I will say, he took his benching well, in that he responded with a positive attitude. He lost the weight, he put the work in, and then when he got the opportunity, he has taken advantage of it. So either way, no matter how they got there, it looks like a really good thing now, because that's a huge thing that they can take off of potentially their offseason go get list, which is something that tends to cost a lot in assets or money or whatever. So I'm happy that he ended up there. I just kind of wish it looked more on purpose, maybe. And I'm just not sure they ever would have got there. And I get it. He was forced there, and it doesn't really matter. There's just a couple things this year that combined with Deshaun not getting benched when he should have, it concerns me that the coaches aren't getting there themselves a little bit.
I was just going to say,
one thing with, oh, my bad. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I agree that, I feel like we're more sensitive to these things with this coaching staff right now because of the whole quarterback situation and on like how long it took for, not for them to even make that decision to be forced into it. And we just have, like you said, seen a pattern with them over the years, just maybe taking a little bit longer than everyone else would to make certain decisions. So I think it's fair to be weary of that when you see something come up where, you feel like a decision should be made and they're just taking more time.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically what I was about to say. Ab hit it right on the spot.
All right, very fair. All right. So who wants let's Quincy, why don't you go?
All right. The thing I think I know is that the offensive performance for this team for the rest of the season absolutely 100% will determine if Kevin can keep his job this season. I think if you're going to make the argument as Kevin Stefanski, right, that the reason this season is this way is because the offense, the first 7 weeks, was not being executed properly because you were getting historically bad quarterback play from Watson for whatever reason. You have to present for the rest of the year a very attractive case to that was actually what was going on, right? So you have to have it look a lot different from the rest of the year. If we can't get to 20 for the rest of the year, it's not going to look like, oh, it was just Watson. It's going to feel like Kevin's part of that problem too. And in order to fix it, you might have to replace Watson and Kevin as the coach, right? So if they want to get out of here, I think the most important thing for them the rest of the year is offensive performance. Now, they don't have to be a top 10 offense, but they do have to be a normal offense, right? Like within the middle of the NFL, because nobody's expecting you to be a top 5 offense with Jameis Winston because he's not a franchise quarterback. He's not who you paid $250 million, $230 million for. So I think that's going to be what determines like the future of Kevin Stefanski. And I think the pressure for that to happen, like, I don't think it's like Jimmy Haslam saying that this is the case or anything like that. I think this is just, it just makes sense. If you want to keep Kevin on, he has to perform better offensively, or else anybody would look at that and go, hey man, like, doesn't look like he's a part of the solution there. And I think that's a good thing for this team, that they have that pressure to perform offensively. I know a lot of people want to get the best draft position as possible. I don't think it makes much of a difference this year. You can move up to whatever spot you want to get to this year, whether it be for a quarterback or a tackle. I don't think you're going to find a lot of people hard on not moving their spot. I think for the Browns, it's important that you build some confidence in this offense and kind of also some confidence in this fan base that, hey, this was the problem in 2024. It wasn't that we're an incompetent bunch from top to bottom offensively. It's that we committed to a quarterback at the beginning of this year that was not playing well. And if we can just get mediocre play, we can be an above average team, which is very feasible because you could get, I mean, look, Joe Flacco is going to be available if you want to bring him back. Jameis Winston's probably going to be available if you want to bring him back. You can go old school, grab Jacoby Brissett. He'll be available for cheap too. Or if you want to, manipulate the cap enough to try to bring in like a Kirk Cousins to really try to compete this year or next year, you can do that too. But in order for anybody to feel comfortable in doing that, Kevin needs to have this offense perform to what has been what we referred to earlier in the season as the Stefanski standard with Jameis Winston, or else if you can't do that, then it paints a different picture about the failure of this season. And it's not just about what Watson was or was not able to do. It's also going to be about how you failed to integrate Ken Dorsey's concepts in this offense and basically tanked an offense.
Yeah, my only, I guess I have like maybe two disagreements with that is one, kind of that Ken Dorsey piece, that I do feel like even if the offense does underperform, that there is a world where they kind of let that fall on Dorsey rather than Stefanski, and he's kind of the scapegoat for those problems, gets fired, and then they say we're kind of going to reshape the offense in some other way. I think the one other thing that makes me think differently now, obviously, if they like are so terrible, can't win a single game for the rest of the season, that might change things. But I do think the way Andrew Berry has been talking, he had his media availability either last week or however recent that was, and the confidence that he talks about Kevin with just makes me really think that they're in lockstep moving forward, and that he really does have a belief in him. So those are my only two, I guess, kind of gripes with it, even though I would agree that if it is like terrible, worst in the league rest of the season, there might be a world where they have to make that decision.
Yeah, if it's that bad, I could see that. But I was going to kind of say very similar things to what Abby just said about, I think there's a chance that the hard part for me is the Ken Dorsey aspect of the whole thing. Like, he's calling plays now, like, it's kind of a hybrid of both of their concepts, right? So I think it could, like, to what Abby said, I think it could fall on Ken Dorsey over Kevin. It's like Kevin has a body of work that is big enough that I think it's justified that he keep his job regardless through this season, I guess. I think the pressure you talked about, Quincy, is a good thing to have on them for sure. But I think it would have to be really, really, really awful for them to get rid of Kevin.
Yeah, I think when I look back at how many coaches get fired and when these coaches get fired, I know we tend to fall on record getting coaches fired. I think it's more how you get to that record that gets coaches fired. And the one thing about Jimmy Haslam is that he does not respond well to feeling embarrassed by the end of the season, right? And that's what I mean. Like, you got this offense is embarrassing. Well, it was embarrassing the first 7 weeks of the season. You can't lose in Baltimore to their backups, put up an embarrassing effort offensively, and think like Jimmy's not going to feel like something needs to change, especially if your record is 4-something and you expect it to be in the Super Bowl. I get that Ken Dorsey seems like the obvious fall guy. I think there's a chance where the offense plays well for the rest of the year and Ken Dorsey still gets asked to leave. Like, it's just it's a tough spot. He was brought in to do something that, like, they don't seem like they're going to do that much anymore going further, right? Like, it just is what it is. I just think that given the expectations to start the year, you are playing on a real fine line here if you're the Browns about how bad this gets, or if this continues to be like sub 500 football for the rest of the way. I think, especially with how much the fan base is angry right now and Jimmy feels that pressure, it would be difficult for management not to make a decision there. And if you want to protect your job, you kind of have to understand that and give these fans something to be excited about going into next year. Not saying that the fans should determine whether you keep your job or not, but if they're not selling season tickets, if they know that people aren't excited about this next year, I mean, a decision has to be made. And I've never seen excitement about this team this low. And if you want to maintain the spot that you have, you got to make a change there, right? Like, that's when you make the move for Mike Vrabel if you feel like the fan base needs a jolt. So those kind of things do affect decision making. I think in a perfect box where we're not worried about commerce and all this other stuff, I think Kevin should keep his job. But this season, for whatever reason, has drained the fan base in a way that I have never seen Browns fans be drained to. And that, if that continues, right, that is something that will get everybody fired, because then not only Jimmy's going to be like, we need to make a change, but JW's going to be like, hey, we're having a hard time selling stuff right now. And it's not the usual, the Browns are bad. Lol, it's a little bit worse than that. We got to make a change. These people are tired of, like, it's going to be more internal pressure than just football to make a move.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point too with Jimmy and like how he reacts when he gets embarrassed, because I just think back to Baker's last year, and that wasn't even, we still won like 7 games that season. It wasn't, the worst, season we've ever seen as Browns fans, but people were really upset that season. And it was kind of what you mentioned. It was the way they were losing games. It was like the Christmas Day Packers game. It was all of these things kind of compounding over the course of that season, where he was
Lamar when he throws 4 interceptions.
Yeah, just brutal game after game, especially down the stretch at the end. And he was, obviously this wasn't just his decision, but the desperation to put up $230 million guaranteed with such a controversial quarterback at that point, like he is willing to do big things that maybe are unpopular just because he wants to be like, okay, I was embarrassed and we have to do something different. So I do think that is the one outlier you always have to think about.
Yeah, it's fair. Certainly have to take into account the as you said it perfectly, the drain on this fan base. Certainly, that's a real thing. And I do think you have to take that into account. I hope Kevin keeps his job. I think it would be a mistake to do that. And I think you make a really good point about Ken Dorsey too. He's just like in a weird spot right now. About like he was brought in to fix Deshaun, and that's no longer a factor. So it'll be interesting to see. A lot. That's what these 8 games are all about, right? Like, what direction are they going to go? Can they put up an offensive direction that looks like, hey, yeah, we wanted to go this way. This looks good, or is it no matter what, are they going to turn a different direction offensively? I think that depends on who they end up on as your quarterback, right? So
the tough thing with Ken Dorsey is like Ken Dorsey is a good offensive coordinator to try to get, like, he's like Todd Monken, right? Todd Monken was here with a young quarterback and it looked bad, right? Because he's not the offensive coordinator you want with a young quarterback. He's the offensive coordinator you want with a veteran quarterback who can really read the field. And that's kind of what Ken Dorsey is, right above everything else. He's a guy who does really good with veteran quarterbacks who can read downfield and really like to attack downfield. And that's where I'm like, with Ken, even if the plan wasn't, okay, let's keep going with Deshaun Watson. Because look, they run Jameis Winston out there. They run the same amount of shotgun under center stuff that they ran with Kevin, right? It's basically some of the stuff is Ken Dorsey's offense, but a lot of this still is like the fundamentals of what Kevin likes to do. Yeah. So if they went out, got like a Kirk Cousins, right? Or they decided to go like Derek Carr, something like that, right? They would probably be like, okay, we can keep Ken Dorsey. If they decide to go get a rookie, that's where I'm like, I don't know. That's the dude you want for a rookie, right? Yeah. Like, even though he's not bad at his job, you might want to get somebody, maybe even like, let's say you go the Milroe route and you go just elevate Tommy Rees because he has that familiarity with them. There's just so many pathways I can see him not making it that have nothing to do with the performance of the offense that make me just go, he feels super expendable. And I think they're doing him a favor by giving him the play calling here so he has an opportunity to show his value to a different NFL team here that might pick him up at the end of the season. Because if he just sat here and did nothing behind Kevin Stefanski, he would be a quarterback's coach again and not get an opportunity to be an offensive coordinator somewhere. So I think he's trying to, like Kevin, one thing he does his coordinators solids on the way out, right? And it seems to work out because all of his coordinators get lateral moves. Even Joe Woods got a lateral move. By the way, is he still there? Yeah. Did we just skip over the biggest one? Are we playing Joe Woods this weekend, y'all?
We are.
I didn't even think about that. Oh my God.
Joe Woods and Clint Kubiak.
Okay, this offense needs to. They got to do something against this defense. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of conversations online.
See, look, this is how down we've been. We have missed the opportunity. We've talked about Jameis revenge game. Joe Woods. We get to play Joe Woods again. All right.
He's gotta be high on the list of like a public enemy of this fan base of all time. Like
I can't
really
wait until
him.
like they put the camera on him during the game. Be like, oh yeah, he used to be on the Browns, and then like everybody on Twitter and Blue Sky are like, oh, it's Joe Woods.
Yeah, that moment will happen
because literally this same epiphany that we had is gonna like sweep across everybody in Cleveland. You're like, oh my God, he's still there.
They're gonna put up some statistics with how bad the run defense was under Joe Woods. Like they're gonna just list everything out.
They'll running cover 3, Seattle cover 3.
That's what he knows. He's a DB coach, right? He's always going to run that system there. And they lost Marshawn Lattimore. He traded him recently. So that's man. Joe Woods comes to town. So if the Browns lose, oh my God, you cannot have a bad offensive performance. You absolutely cannot. Because if you think the fans are bad now, wait until they realize they got cooked by Joe Woods.
There is no way.
Kevin might not make it out of there.
That might be an embarrassing moment.
That is the moment that could turn this whole thing. Also, you play Pittsburgh on national TV, right? Like these next 2 weeks, if Kevin makes it out these next 2 weeks, I do think he's safe for the rest of the year.
It's a great point. Good points all around on the coaching factor. Interesting stuff. Very good. All right, Abby, your turn. What do you got for us?
So mine originally was actually going to be about the Dawan Jones, Jed Wills situation, on how I just generally feel comfortable moving forward with him as the left tackle of the future, moving on from Jed Wills. But I've been trying to think of another one throughout this because I don't think we need to talk about those two guys anymore. But I'm going to kind of stay in the offensive line with Joel Bentonio. I feel like he could be coming closer towards the end of his, definitely coming down from his peak. He is not the player that he used to be, but closer towards the end of his career in general. He has been in this league for a long time, and I think they definitely need to start thinking about the guard position in the future. And I know a lot has revolved around tackle because of all of the issues that we've had at tackle this season, especially, and just the frustration with Jed and Dawan and injuries and all of that. But I wouldn't be super shocked to see this team next in the draft, in this coming draft, take a guard early on rather than focusing as much on tackle. Because I do think they're going to want to start developing someone to kind of take over for Bentonio in the future. And that's kind of where my mind has been going, because I feel like we don't talk as much about guard since those guys have been so locked down for so many years.
So you have to start thinking about a succession plan for him, because he's going to retire at some point here, right? It might be after this year. I don't know. But they did take Zach Zinter. Now, the thing with Zinter is he was coming off that injury, right? And he has not looked good in the time that he starts. But I don't know how much of that is him still recovering, or how much of it is you know what I mean? Like, I just don't know enough to know if he's still hurt or what it is.
And it could be that, he had to recover from that ACL injury all summer. So he didn't have the room to build up the strength that he needed coming into this season, right? Especially when you play his style. He's a road grader. He's this physical, strong guy. I think that's one of those guys similar to Wyatt Teller, where you just wait a couple of years to really get into a couple strength and conditioning programs, and then you're going to see him be able to play well, because he's not a finesse guy. He's not one of these smaller guards who can move around. He's a big physical brute, and he just needs to strengthen up, right? I mean, I think it's like a rarity that you see somebody like a Michael Hall, who's like 21 years old, able to like live on an NFL line of scrimmage. But Zinter, I think, we'll see what he is in a year or two. But that's the problem with like drafting offensive linemen, and why I thought that they should have really went at offensive line strong last draft class, because when you need them is not when you need to draft them, right? Like when you need them is when you need, okay, this guy's a year away. But we'll see how they try to make up for that in this year's draft, or who they try to sign. They'll have some space to do some stuff. But But I think that a lot of that space is probably going to go towards either right tackle, they'll be fine. I think they're probably going to spend money on a guard or something like that, right, if Joe retires.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think you need to address it somewhere with another guard, and you probably need to address another tackle somewhere too. You need to have a swing tackle. I don't know what they're going to do with Conklin is the thing, right? Like, are you going to bring him back and expect him to start 17 games? Because that's high expectations for a guy that can't stay healthy. So I don't know. When he's healthy, he's good, right? But this offensive line has a lot of questions. So, center is a question. Is Whippler going to get back? Pochich is not the same guy. I don't know what you're going to do there either. So, you have to, and it's a great point about drafting the guys early, because on either side of the line of scrimmage, like you said, Mike Hall's the exception. They're not going to be ready right away. So maybe free agency is the route for the offensive line. And you're going to have to overpay, and they hate doing that, but it might be the best way to go about it. But you're right. They need some sort of a plan.
I think
it also depends too on how they're gonna try to play the quarterback position. Because if you get if you get because when Jameis is out there, like, the offensive line is the problems are pretty mitigated. If you try to stick with like a Flacco, or you go get a Kirk Cousins or somebody, then I think you'll be fine with your offensive line not being the greatest, as long as you get it to like with the standard of living, right? Like, you just want to get it to the standard of living, right? Get the $30 an hour there. But that's where I think the goal should be for this offensive line. I don't think it's going to take a big money deal to get there. I think it's just going to be about making some, like, a smart signing in the interior, right? Because those tackles are just going to be very expensive. I would, if you really want to get a third tackle, just draft one that's going to be much better off for you, especially given your draft position in the second and first round, and you got 2 third-round picks. And the interior guys, those guys don't run you as much, especially if you need a center, right? If you just want to replace Ethan Posick, you can probably run that for like $5-8 million.
Yeah, they had a guy in Brian Allen who would have worked out fine, and he got hurt. So I mean, it's just
how many guys on this whole line got hurt this year?
I know.
I
mean, that's part of it too. Like, what do we feel the same about this offensive line if they're not just hurt, but like even the guys who are back have just gotten back like a couple weeks ago. So like, they're not even back to being back yet. Like, I think I made this point about the Cavs on one of my videos where I was like, the thing is that they've been healthy for a long time now. And like last year, it was constantly somebody getting back from injury. And I wonder if we're just going to feel differently about this offensive line once they add some pieces in the draft, obviously, maybe somebody in free agent, but also like if they just get like a healthy off season where they're not consistently in and out the lineup. And with Jack Conklin, you're not expecting that, but with Dawan and other guys on that line, you are expecting that to be the case. Even the guy they drafted came in on crutches, right? If you just get that, I wonder how much different this offensive line would look going into next year.
I also don't think they need to hurry up and fix everything in one offseason, especially if they're not planning on drafting their quarterback of the future, because obviously once you are looking to draft someone, I think you probably want your offensive line to be in a better place so that you give that quarterback the best possible chance of succeeding and, give them a shot at surviving in this league. So if that's going to be 2-3 years down the road that they're going to really try to make a move to draft a guy, maybe they really spend this next year or two, building up through the draft, developing guys, kind of clawing away at it and getting healthy. Like you said, that'll be a factor too.
And hey,
my main concern on the
trade.
exactly. My main concern really to your point, Q, about, if you got a veteran in there who's going to get rid of the ball, it just needs to be average pass protection, right? My main concern is the run game. Like, the run game has looked terrible, and part of that is not having any continuity this year because of the injuries, but they need to be better going forward or have a direction at the end of this 8 games of like, here's what we need to do to be able to have a successful run game where we can at least create some room for Nick Chubb and whoever else you bring in next year.
Yeah. It's like, it's so fickle how offensive line works too. Cause like, we're legitimately like, hey, if Zach Zinter looks good next year and he like gets the weight program, let's say he gets the strength he needs to, and he's like moving guys at a high level, and then like you upgrade center, maybe it's even Luke Whippler that steps in and like we find out he's really good or whatever it is, or you trade for like a guy who's like a fringe starter and he turns out working out. Then all of a sudden we're like, oh no, we can run again, right? Like because then you have Wyatt Teller, then you have Jack Conklin, and all of a sudden these things aren't as big as a concern, and then you're basically only asking Dawan Jones to pin down, right? Like on pin down concepts, and then you're pulling around him, and then you're fine. I think the issue right now is you can't hide Dawan on pin downs because you can't pull Joel like you want to pull Joel on the left side, and I think that helped him on the right side because you could just do a pin down, run wide over him, but you don't have the athleticism at guard right now to be able to pin over him the way that you would like to. And then when Joel does pin, he doesn't hit in space as well as he used to.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's fickle, and it could turn quickly with a couple good moves. So good points all around, guys. Make sure you follow Abby Mueller on Twitter and Blue Sky. I heard you mention that one out there. Yeah. Blue Sky getting popular. Yeah, Abby _ Mueller _ and of course Quincy Carrier at Quinn_C. You guys got any parting words before we get out of here?
Everybody enjoy the Sundays that we have, because as much as we're complaining about the Browns and how much we hate watching them, you know what we're gonna do that first Sunday of like March? We're gonna be damn, I wish the Browns were playing football, right? So let's try to get the most out of the rest of this season. We know they're not going to be the world beaters we hope they be. We know they're not going to be a Super Bowl team. We can be angry and frustrated and furious about that, but also let's see what they're going to be for the rest of this season. Right now, they're 1-1. They've played 2 of the best teams in the AFC. They beat the Ravens. They lost to the Chargers. This week, they play the Saints. And if they end up being fun down the stretch, allow yourself the permission to have fun with it, right? Because we get it. This season was what it was. But if they pour some fun out of it, who are we to say no to that fun right now, right? Love that. I see a lot of people like just being super stuck in just viewing things through the grimmest light possible. And I get it. This team is massively disappointing, and they've done it in just the most disgusting way possible over the last few years. They deserve some of the negativity that they have gotten, but also you don't deserve the negativity that you're giving yourself. Give yourself the freedom to be at the part of the season where it's like, hey, if they win, awesome, I'm gonna enjoy it, I'm gonna celebrate. And what people gonna tell me, oh, we stink, okay, so what? You lost to the team that stinks, right? And then if you lose, okay, cool, we just are gonna draft somebody that's gonna make us better next year. In pro sports, you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are, and that is always true. And the Browns, as bad as you feel about them right now, it would not be crazy if they like made 1 or 2 moves. Next thing you know, they're the hottest thing on earth. Remember how people were down on the Cavs all last season? Oh, this course stinks, we need to tear it down. They make 1 move this offseason, and now they're the best team in the NBA. So just think about that. We already know who the JB. I feel so bad for JB. We already know who the JB is of this team and what the move needs to be made in the offseason to be better. And if we would have benched them earlier, I feel like we'd be 5-4 at the very least right now. So we're not even that bad. It's just we know what the problem is. Now it's about rectifying that problem and moving on to a new era. And I think that will be exciting once it becomes more and more realized that that's where the direction that this team, quite frankly, has to go in this offseason.
Yeah. I like the message of enjoying it no matter what, because that feeling I had after the win over the Ravens when the season was like still pretty much over at that point. I know there was like a chance that they could still turn things around, make the playoffs, but it was pretty much over. I still have never been so excited. Like that was just a joyous moment after that win. And it was like, you know what? We should allow ourselves to be happy regardless. So I co-signed that message.
Oh yeah. And then here's the thing. When you're good and you beat the Steelers, okay.
We'll always
good team won. Yeah. But if you stink and beat the Steelers,
yeah.
Even better.
I guess you guys are fake. You know, I guess you guys aren't good for real.
Oh, yeah.
So just know the Browns have already hurt you as much as they can hurt you this season. They can't hurt you no more. Like there's no more disappointment left to ring out this season as long as everybody stays healthy, knock on wood. But if you're looking for anything enjoyment, if you beat the Steelers on Thursday Night Football, that will feel really good, right? If you beat the Saints this weekend, it might feel good, it might not. I can see people talking themselves out of it. Oh, it's just the Saints. I've seen Browns fans do it before. But if you beat the Steelers on Thursday night, they're going to be mad about that one, right? Yeah. You beat the Chiefs. Imagine if this Browns team with Jameis Winston is the team that beats the Chiefs. It wouldn't be shocking. I mean, the Jets were the one that snapped it for the Eagles last year. So, just try to have fun with it at this point, right? Like it doesn't have to be like we understand this team has problems, needs to be fixed, but being miserable about it doesn't mean you're taking that more seriously than somebody who chooses to try to enjoy what's left of this year.
Yeah, no, and there's enough there, especially just watching Jameis and evaluating him and hoping that he can play good enough football that maybe he provides you with an answer next year, right? So that in itself should be fun. He's fun to watch just in general.
Even other guys too, like Cedric Tillman or people that have shown like flashes of good moments, like being able to see progression from some of the younger guys that you're hoping can be, you know, important pieces in the future. Like those things are valuable too.
For real. For Abby Mueller, Quincy Carrier, my name is Brad Ward. This has been another edition of Things I Think I Know About the Browns. Keep it locked at the OBR streaming network. We are out.